Hi, and welcome to this workshop on augmented reality in Vuforia and Unity 3D. This is based on an earlier workshop I created around 2 years ago. In the meantime, the software has changed significantly enough that I think it is time for an update. So what I want you to learn today is how to create an augmented reality scene with two image targets that can be detected at the same time and can be tracked at the same time. The idea is that once you can do this with two image targets, it's fairly easy to expand that and to have multiple image targets all running at the same time and give you feedback or give you augmented content. And this strategy, I think, is especially interesting to explore in the context of contemporary art or visual arts, when we, on a more deeper level, investigate these relationships between images in the world around us and then also virtual or digital content that we can use to augment them with as tools for creative expression or critical commentary, for example. So in any case, it'll be a really interesting process that we can connect to concept and to ideas relatively easily. So I'll switch to the monitor view here in just a second and show you how you can get started with this project. We begin this project by creating a new folder on the desktop that I call My First AR Project. And we will use this folder throughout the work today. We will put all the files that are required for the Unity project in there. Our Vuforia image target database will go in there when we download it, and all the other files that Unity will create along the way. So keeping everything in one place, in one location, is going to be really helpful for this work. And first thing, what we can actually put in there is this folder with our workshop materials. I have already downloaded them from the link that I also put in the comments to this video. So download these files and then put them into this project folder. And then in case you're interested in the workshop materials, there's actually two folders. In that zip archive, after you expand it, you see that there's a 3D models folder in here that has 3 OBJ files that we can use to augment content in Unity with. And then it also has our image targets in there. If you open this, you see the pre-scaled image targets, making sure that they're under 2 megabytes in size. And then the larger versions of them, if you ever want to print them out for physical objects that you can hold up in front of the camera, they are in here as well in the to print folder. Okay, so let's get started then with Vuforia. So we go to the Vuforia developers portal, developer.vuforia.com. If you haven't registered, there's an easy way to click on this link here and then choose a username and a password. I have already done that and I'm logging in with my credentials. Once you're in the Vuforia developers portal, you see that there's two tabs that are interesting that we're going to use today. The first one is the license manager. Here we will set up a license key for our first AR app. And you see I've already created 3 license keys in here before. You can actually have a few of them. It's actually good practice to have 1 license key per app that you're developing. And then we also have the target manager. This is where we'll set up our image target database, where we upload all our image targets into so that Vuforia can analyze them and then track them later on in our AR app. I also see that I have quite a few databases already set up. And I'll show you how to create a new one and then fill it with content. So let's take a look at the license manager first. If you need to set up a new license, you can say get development key. And then I will set up my license with the name My First AR Project, just to keep it consistent with the name of that folder that I set up in the beginning of this workshop. In fact, I've already set up this license key, so I won't confirm after we go through all the settings here, but I'll just go back and then use that key that's already in there. You would have to check the terms that you agree to. This is actually a free development license. It works great for experimental purposes, and it shows you the conditions under which you can use it. You just hit confirm here to create that license key. I say cancel because I already have it in here. And then once you create it, you can actually take a look at the code that has been generated for this license key that we would then need to transfer over into Unity in just a second and apply to our AR camera game object that we use in there. So this is the first part, to set up a new license key in the license manager. Let's go and set up a new image target database in the target manager. And also just simply say add database. Click on that and then create a database name. Again, my first AR project. I've already set up this database back here. So I'll just quickly show you how you would do that and then cancel out of it. This is important that you choose a device database. So all the images, all the code that is required is going to be downloaded onto the device. It's not going to be a cloud database or a ViewMark database. So again, I cancel out of this and then just take a look at the database that I already created here. I've already uploaded all of the images that are in the materials folder for this workshop, so just to save some time. But in your case, if you just created that database from scratch, there won't be anything in there. So you would start to fill it with content by going to the Add Target button, and then you would browse for images. So I need to go to the desktop, my first AR project, go to the workshop materials folder, image targets, and then choose one image in there, the first one that I see on this list. Hit open. And then I specify a width of 1 for now. It's a default width. It's not so important to have the correct size in here. What is more important later on is to establish a proportional relationship between your image target in Unity 3D and then the augmented content, the 3D model or the video content or static image content that you want to overlay on top of that. So that will be more important. So for now, I'll just leave the width at 1. And you could rename this file if you wanted to, otherwise it just takes the name of the file. Again, remember, it needs to be under 2 megabytes in size, what you upload, and it needs to be a PNG or JPEG image in the RGB color mode or 8-bit grayscale color mode. Otherwise, you'll get an error message. All right, and I would just say add here. In my case, I just cancel out, but when you say add, it would be added to your database, as you can see down here. And then when it's added to the database after a few seconds or so, it already gives you a star rating, and these stars indicate how easy it is for the AR camera to track this object, to detect it, and then also to latch on and track it. So to a certain extent, it represents a certain amount of robustness for the image tracking, and the more stars you receive, the better obviously it will be. However, even though you have maybe a 1-star rating or a 2-star rating, all of these images will work to a certain extent. You may get some jittering or some kind of shakiness when you see the augmented content on top of this image, but it will still work to a certain extent. Now, where's the star rating coming from? If you are clicking onto the image name, you can get a preview of what it looks like. And then at the bottom of the page, you have a link that says Show Features. And if you click on that, you see all the different unique markers that are being analyzed and embedded in the image that Vuforia is actually using in order to track it and to distinguish it from any other images that it encounters. All right, so I go back to my database, and you can just keep adding targets to your database. I'm already done with this, so I just download the database so that I can later use it in Unity in the first AR project that we're going to do today. Once you click on the download database link, you need to specify the Unity editor in here. So although you might develop for Android or an iPhone or iPad setting later on where you have to go through Xcode, you still have to choose the Unity editor since this is the next step in our development pipeline. So hit download, we'll compile the database and then downloaded automatically to your computer. Just say OK, I want to download it. And in my case, it went into the downloads folder in the dock. And I can take it from here. Oops, just cancel out of this quickly. I can take it from here and then drag and drop it already into the My First AR project folder that I created in the beginning of the workshop. So we'll need this Unity package in just a second when we start Unity, so that the AR camera can detect all of the image targets that we have set up. Seen that the Unity Hub already started automatically in the background after I downloaded the file. And in the Hub, you can set up a new project now. Just click on New. In my case, I actually have a variety of different versions of Unity installed. For this workshop, I'm using the long-time support version 2018.4.7. However, this workshop also works equally as well with the 2019 version. To some extent, it would even work with a version greater than 2017.2. Let's choose 2018.4 here, and then we create a new project. Call this also My First AR Project. And then I want to save this into the folder on the desktop that I just created. So it's already selected for me. Say Select Folder. And I need to make sure that it's a 3D project that I'm working on. I hit Create. This might just take a minute then for Unity to get set up. So in Unity, I can just quickly take a look at the windows. If this is the very first time that you open the software, just get yourself familiarized with the windows. We have a project window at the bottom here. We'll start very soon to load our assets, our packages, our image target database package, for example, that we created in Vuforia in here, but also our 3D assets that we want to use later on in the project. We can drag and drop assets from the project window into the scene window that you see here, which gives us a preview of all our game objects and assets that we use in a project or in a scene. And then related to the scene, we see there's a hierarchy window where we can address components individually by clicking on them. You see by default there's two components or two elements already in our scene. Game objects, you can call them as well, the camera and then a directional light source. And you see when you click on these items, then the inspector on the right-hand side changes accordingly and gives you access to certain properties that these elements or these items have. You can add components to them, scripts, for example, or materials to 3D objects, for example. And you can also change some of the settings, the position, rotation, scale of an object, for example. And then some other more specific settings that relate to this item. In our case, what we would like to do is we would like to get started, however, with Vuforia in Unity. So we need to make sure that the Vuforia mode is enabled for our project. And we'll do that by going to File, Build Settings. And then we just hit the player settings here and make sure that the Vuforia Augmented Reality settings are checked. All right, that's all that we need to do. And now we can create our very first game object that is specific to Vuforia, which will be an AR camera that will allow us to look at the world around us through the camera of our mobile device later on. For today, it will be the camera that's built into my computer, but later on the goal is, of course, to control or to use the camera that is built into your mobile device. So I do that by saying Game Object, Vuforia Engine, AR Camera. I import the assets that are required for that, or the packages that are required for that. And when this process is done, you should see your AR camera in the scene. So here it is, just showed up, and also in the hierarchy window on the left-hand side. Since we're going to use the AR camera and not the main camera that was already there in our sample scene, we can delete the main camera. On the Mac, I just control-click on this and say delete. On the PC, I guess you would just right-click on it and you can delete it that way too. Now for the AR camera, I need to go into the Vuforia engine and configuration, and I need to activate this camera with the license key that I just set up on the Vuforia website. So you see that there's an app license key field up here at the top, and so if I go back to Vuforia and go to the license manager, I have to choose the right license for this project, my first AR project I have specified here. And then I just simply click into this field. It says it's copied to the clipboard. I can go back to Vuforia and then paste it into the app license key field here. So that's the first thing that we need to do. If you don't have that license key, your camera won't work. So this is a very important step. The next step now is to import our Vuforia image target database. So we go to Assets and say Import Package, Custom Package, and then navigate to the folder on the desktop that I created in the beginning, into which I downloaded my image target database package that was created on the Vuforia website from my image target database. I open this. It gives me a preview of all the images that are in there, and by default they're all checked, so just leave all of these settings as they are. Hit import, and then we already see, if we go back to the AR camera and look at the Vuforia engine settings, that the name of the database shows up under databases for the camera. So this database by default is enabled with this AR camera, and if you have multiple databases, they would all show up in this list as well. So the next step is to bring in an image target, an actual virtual representation of our image target into the scene that then the AR camera can track and that we can use to augment it with virtual content. So we do that by going to Game Objects and choose under Vuforia Engine the image item, and it's being put into the origin of our coordinate system. And you can leave it actually in this place, and what we want to do is we want to move up the camera just slightly so that we can actually see the image target already in the camera preview. And do that by clicking on AR camera on the left-hand side, and then use the arrows to move it up on the y-axis. This one would be your left-right axis, the x-axis, and then this one would be your z-axis, in and out axis of the screen. You can also do all of this numerically by going to your transform settings in the inspector and then type in numbers individually for the placement or the translation of the camera. And then the last step, what I need to do for the camera is I need to make it look down onto the image target. So I also choose a rotation around the x-axis by 90 degrees. And so now I already get a preview of my image target. And by default, as you can see, the texture of the image target, it shows the Jackson Pollock Echo number 25 painting. But you can choose that or change that image by going to Image Target and then look at the Image Target behavior script on the right-hand side, and then go to the Image Target pull down and then choose a different image, for example, this one. Now we need to bring in our augmented reality content, our virtual content that we want to attach to this image. And in my case, it is one of the 3D models that I want to choose. So I go to Import, New Asset, and then I go to my folder, to the workshop materials, in there, 3D models, and I want to bring in the cornstalk for this specific image target here. It's now in my assets folder at the bottom, and I can just simply drag and drop it from here into my scene. It won't be perfectly placed, as you can see, but you can use, clicking on corn here, the again, the position properties and center it. And then you can also use the scale properties to scale it down. So for example, 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, or if you like, you can do that a little bit more interactively by going to your toolbar up here and then choose the scale tool and just click on that center cube that sits on the object, and that would scale it proportionally. Just have to quickly reposition it in the center, and then everything is ready to go with this object. So the last thing we need to do is now we need to make the corn OBJ file a child of the image target. You simply take it from the hierarchy and then drag and drop it onto the image target, and that way you create that relationship between these two elements. At this point, I'm ready to test it out already and see if this works. One thing that's a good idea before you do that is save the project quickly, just in case something happens with your camera, or I've seen the application crash. If there's a mistake somewhere, then you don't have to redo your whole progress. So I'm ready to test it out, and I just hit my play button here. So we'll start the camera, and so here we are with our live image. Okay, so here is the cornstalk, and it's firmly attached to my image target. And in the next step, I actually wanted to show you how you can also attach something to a second image target in the same scene and have both being triggered simultaneously. So we'll do that in the last step, and then we are already finishing up the workshop for today. So bringing in a second image target is actually the same process as we did for the first image target. We need to make sure that we don't have anything selected in here, and then go to Game Object, Vuforia Engine Image, and it creates already my second image target for me. And now I can see it's right on top of the first one, so it's probably a good idea to move that just a little bit over. So I go to the Move tool here, and then just slightly move it out of the way. Doesn't matter where exactly it sits in your scene, just for the purpose of working a little bit better, it's probably nice not to have it sit right on top of the first image target. All right, and let's also bring in some virtual content that we want to attach to this image target, and we do that by going to Assets again, Import New Asset, and then this time we choose the deer head, say Import. All right, and then we can bring the deer head into the scene. You see it's gigantic actually, so I immediately have to do some scaling. If you're wondering how I'm getting around in the scene, I'm actually using the hand tool. I can pan with this hand tool, or I can use the trackpad on my computer. The 2-finger swipe, I can zoom in and out. Or with the hand tool activated, I can hold down the Option key on my keyboard, and then I can orbit around in my scene, and I can take a closer look at where things are and how things possibly need to be scaled. So in fact, I want to orbit a little bit more around it. So now I need to take my deer head and I need to scale it. So probably do 0.05, just see where that gets me, just to make it a little bit more manageable at first, and then do some fine tuning afterwards. So, all right. Yeah, now this was probably a little bit too much. It's completely gone. So 0.1, and then I center it, and here it is. So this is not so bad. Just need to move it over a little bit. And now I need to make it align with my image, and I can use the rotate function here. See that there's individual, let's turn this around a little bit. So there's individual circles around the object that allow me to rotate this using certain angles. And once you have the angle specified, then you can actually very precisely rotate it by, for example, 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So you can take one of these rings and then rotate it around this very specific axis. So in this case, if I want to rotate it around the green axis, I can just take this one here and then rotate it. This was probably minus 90, and then this was 90, and let's just see where we're at with this right now. Okay, this is not so bad. Only thing is now I need to rotate it around its own axis one more time, so to make it match up with the image a little bit better. I use the blue axis for this and then rotate it there. So it was 270 probably. And then I just align it with the image target. So, all right, something like this. If you want to take a look at it from the top, for example, get a better idea of what this looks like, you can use this little fidget thingy here. And then you can always use the orbit tool to get out of the more angular view again, like this. All right, so the last thing I need to do with the deer head is I need to make it a child of my second image target, of the Pollock image target. And so since you have two game objects that are called image target, it's probably also a good idea to rename them. So the first one I could name corn target, and then the second one I could name deer target. And then as you keep adding on image targets, it shouldn't be so hard to keep them apart, especially if you have to go back and you have to change something of your image targets. So here's a little camera preview. So I have two of my image targets in here. So the last thing I need to do now is I need to go back to the AR camera. I need to go into the Vuforia engine configuration, and I need to change the max simultaneous track in and out setting, that is here, to 2. That will allow me to track both of these image targets at the same time. Again, I'll save this one more time, and then I'm ready to preview it already, and fingers crossed it should hopefully work. And here we are. So the deer head is already attached to the Jackson Pollock painting in the back, and I just need to see that there's the second AR content on my image target with the cracked asphalt. And that concludes today's workshop. So now you know how to create your own augmented reality scenes with 2 or even more image targets in the scene. And you can start exploring and working with this tool yourself. Please keep checking the links in the comment section for this tutorial, because there's instructions on how you output something like this onto your Android device or onto your iOS device. And that would be the next step in basically making something like this mobile.